Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode.
Kind of at the heart of this, I'll say from our business, is to maintain those relationships with our partners that have been there for us, and to continue establishing additional future partnerships with organizations that we may not have thought of before. And so that kind of always shifts a little bit. There's different partnerships that we just, I think, as I've kind of just said, I just didn't think that we would necessarily grapple onto. And so having this time, it's really opened up our thinking a little bit more, and throwing that playbook out the window has kind of allowed us to look at, I think, as you said, kind of the bigger picture in a different way, and really take that approach. It's to say that there's a step-by-step, right now there's not almost, every time I kind of want to put a process in place and say, all right, we're going to do X, first, and then we're going to do Y, and then we're going to do, the next step on, I always get disappointed in some ways. And so, yeah,
I was going to say, do you feel like you have to shoot from the hip a lot?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. That becomes a lot of days. And I feel like now I'm more used to it, that I'm really embracing it and I enjoy it. And it, in some ways, we're not really a normal corporate business anymore. We're really independent entrepreneurs of our own independent hotel, and really quite exciting, I would say.
Welcome to Slicktalk, the hospitality podcast where we discuss all things hospitality, hotels, and business. You can find us online at slicktalkthepodcast.com and on every podcast listening platform.
All right, Slick Talkers, this is a podcast you don't want to miss. I got to interview Marcus, which is with the Sheraton Grand Hotel in Chicago. They have over 1,200 rooms. I'm telling you, 1,200 rooms. So this really took me back to my beginning days in hospitality when I first started. I worked for an autograph collection with Marriott, had over 700 rooms. So not as big, but it really does bring me back to the time when I started. And so getting to talk to Marcus really about how COVID-19 has impacted them as a big convention and event corporate hotel, to what they're doing now to pivot. And when we say the word pivot, maybe trying new things, getting a little creative that may have not worked pre-COVID, but now do work and make sense. So this is a really exciting episode. I'm super glad to be able to join him. He just brings such a cool just perspective and dynamic to the show. Great conversation. Tune in. Back to the episode right now.
He's kind of like the Joe Rogan of the hospitality industry right now.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and today I have a cool and amazing opportunity to interview Marcus, who is with the Sheraton in Chicago, correct?
Yeah, good afternoon. Nice to see you, Will.
Yes, you as well, and super excited because you are the Director of Marketing and Sales, and this is kind of a unique opportunity for the podcast. We do a lot of vacation rental stuff and a lot of hotels, but to actually interview somebody that's on the ground in the middle of the pandemic, especially in a big city like Chicago, is pretty cool. So I'm excited to have you on the show and get to pick your brain a little bit and see where the conversation will lead with, just the shift in hospitality, especially with big name brand like the Sheraton. So again, thank you for being on the show, my man. How are you guys doing in Chicago?
Yeah, doing all right. We're kind of in the last, I feel like, week of summer here. It's great temperature outside, and yeah, just enjoying Chicago right now. But as you said, there's a lot going on. The pandemic has certainly impacted our business, so excited to share a little bit about that and how it's impacting our business, and have some good conversation.
Perfect. Yeah, me too. So Marcus, let's dive in. I always love to just get into the meat of the episode and who
Yeah.
you are. So who is Marcus? What do you do? And how did you get to where you are today?
Awesome. Yeah. Jump right in. So, as you said, I'm the director of sales and marketing for the hotel. So, here at the Sheraton Grand Chicago, I'm responsible for overseeing all sales and marketing efforts. We're about $120 million business. So, really, my responsibility falls on achieving that annual revenue for the hotel.
Mhm.
I think I mentioned to you at one point earlier on, sometimes when I tell people what I do, they say, "Oh, so you book weddings," and yeah, in some regard, yes, that's certainly one avenue. We love to host large weddings here at the hotel, but we also work with a lot of large associations in hosting annual events, big exhibitions. But then we have such a great location here in downtown Chicago that we're really ideal and prime location for leisure travel and business
Mhm.
travel. So there's a lot of different avenues of ways that we reach and help to support people through their means of travel.
Yeah, and just to give the Slick Talkers a perspective of the property, how big is your property? Rooms, square footage, event space, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so 1,218 rooms. We're
Wow.
one of the largest hotels here in Chicago, and a little over 125,000 square feet of as an event space. So as I said, we
Wow.
can we can do events as large as up to 4,000 people. A little bit
Wow.
different right now in these days.
Yeah.
We're on the 50-person limit, but can't wait to get back to getting people intentionally close again someday soon.
Yes. Yeah. And with the right, procedures in place. And yeah,
Hmm.
it's so crazy. And especially with big spaces, I think, we talk so much on the show about vacation rentals and hotels and all these like certain things that have been impacted by the virus and just the way the new norm is. But I
Hmm.
don't think we actually talk about like the wedding venues and the places that people gather.
Yeah.
There's gathering places like lobbies and restaurants, but legit gathering spaces like an event
Yeah.
space or
Yeah.
convention center or whatever. Um, yeah, I think that honestly has taken the biggest impact from this whole thing.
Yeah, it really has. Through all the crises, in some ways, I think if that's the right way to describe it, that have happened over the decades, there's never been one quite like this that has
Hmm.
prevented us from being able to be close to one another.
Hmm.
Most of the situations that have impacted our business have been more primarily financially driven, and so it's caused a little bit of a bump. But this, restricting us being able to meet and get together has certainly took a big toll that I don't think that people quite realized how big of an impact the
Yeah.
hospitality industry has on our, especially here in the United States, our economy.
Yeah, seriously, the economy and just our neighborhood in general.
Yeah.
You think about
Yep.
Chicago as a whole, that's a big city with a lot of people,
Yep.
and that's a lot of jobs. That's a lot of families and mouths to feed, and
Yeah.
yeah, and so it really does take a big impact, especially on our neighborhood and our local area.
Yeah.
Um, I do want to ask, so like, kind of, how did you get into the industry? Like, how did you start off in hospitality, and
Yeah.
then what does your journey look like leading up from your beginning to where you are?
Yeah. So, I'll say in some ways, I feel like I've always been a little bit in some form of hospitality. I grew up on a farm
Hmm.
in Iowa, and we were an all organic farm, raised, grew everything that was part of our kind of sustainable living. And through that, as a young kid, I've always had a passion through that I had an aspiration to become a chef. So for college, I moved out here to Chicago, went into culinary school. I remember one of my first classes was from 4 a.m. all the way until 11 p.m. And I
Wow.
was like, whoa, exactly. I was like, this isn't what I was expecting. And so I kind of shifted gears a little bit in terms of my thinking, like, man, do I really want to do this as a career? Because
Yeah.
I think, really gave a great introduction into truly what chefs go through, a lot of long days, a lot of long hours.
Well, with that kind of schedule, you don't have any time. By the time you get home, you have an hour to sleep.
Yeah,
Maybe.
exactly. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
If you don't brush
Drink
your
some
teeth
water.
and get,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I ended up getting an internship at the Hilton Chicago at the front desk. Great iconic hotel here in Chicago. Another large hotel, 1,544 rooms, and was really exposed to a different side, I'll say, of hospitality, working at the front desk, interacting with guests. And I think just my personality, I enjoyed that interaction. I enjoyed serving others. And I was really starting to learn a little bit more about hospitality and the different businesses that you can pursue. And I worked at that hotel, had the pleasure of working at that hotel through college, and ended up.
Can I ask how old you were when you first started the internship?
Yeah, I was 21.
Okay.
Yeah, 21. And I worked there, yeah, as I said, for all throughout college. Eventually moved around to some of the other key departments within the hotel. And upon graduation, I went into a management trainee role. And through that, at the very end, I ended in sales. Had a mentor at the time that had given me essentially a list and said, hey, just go make some cold calls. And I was a little bit intimidated in some ways, and what am I supposed to say? And he gave me a few points, and I kind of just hit the ground running, and I enjoyed it. And he saw an opportunity in me, and helped get me my first job into sales. At the time, I was working for the Hiltons of Chicago, representing 6 really terrific properties here in Chicago. And I kind of haven't looked back since. My career is just kind of catapulted since that point. And since then, I've had an opportunity to work for some amazing hotels. I've opened hotels all around the country, worked for independent hotels, luxury, lifestyle. But for the most part, most of my career has resided, with the exception of a few stints in New York and Miami. Most of my career has been here in Chicago.
Wow. See, I love what you said about a mentor who kind of really took you in. I think from just my own personal experience in the industry, there's not much of that relationship, like the type of kind of take you under my wing. So that's really cool. I think we need to see more of that. And obviously it worked, because here you are today. So that's pretty awesome. I'm impressed. I do want to ask now, with the current position you are in, why have you chosen to stay in hospitality, and what does hospitality really mean to you?
Oh man. I mean, yeah, I think I've thought about what would I do if I were to leave hospitality. And, in some ways, choosing the path of sales, I remember one of the reasons that I continued going down this path of sales is because I feel like it's one of those, I guess you could say, skill sets or disciplines that is transferable to many other industries. Sales is in a lot of different organizations. So I've always thought, if the industry comes crashing down, well, here we go. I could, pick up and go somewhere else, but here we are. And I still couldn't see myself leaving hospitality. Having the opportunity to work with not only so many different people, as we were talking about, hotels, especially of this magnitude, we employ thousands of people. And I love the interaction that I've been able to have in working with people and moving around the country and working with so many different industries. And in some ways, while we're not, I think people often say, we're not necessarily changing lives, but we are, I think, in having an impact on creating really, whether it's, helping a business thrive or creating really special moments, even when it comes down to something like a wedding or somebody planning a trip. Those are things that I like to be a part of. I like to be a part of building that story for other people. I think that's why I've chosen to stay in it. Let me just take a pause there.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it's like I've known you my whole life. I feel like this is like, because when I first started the show, I've been saying, I wish I started, 5 years ago in the industry, and I wish I started sooner, because it does expose you to other industries, sales, customer service,
Yeah.
security,
Yep.
accounting. There's so many things that you can do in the hospitality world that you can take away and apply to any other industry almost.
Yep.
And so I wish I got into it younger, but at the same time, it's like, it's so broad. And if you do it right and you plan, and you can really make something. And now you're preaching to the choir about the moments thing, because that's like, there's so many moments that we encounter throughout a day, whether we're at a hotel or not, just with people like randomly on the street, or just walking, doing whatever with family, friends, etc. There's so many moments that we miss out on because we don't take the opportunity to really just be like, hey, this person said something that kind of referenced this. Maybe they're not feeling really great about that. How can I make this better? And we probably process that and internalize it really quickly, and then we're on to the next thing. But the moment we take like that opportunity to start like, okay, before I move on, before I internalize this thought that somebody else is feeling something and I can do something to do better, or like make it better, or make a moment. We talk about like the big life picture things, getting married and having kids and starting a family, career, job, whatever. Those are big moments. Those are, of course, are celebrated. But I think the moment we take the moments that are little, we really make a huge impact. And that could be literally just a fun story I like to tell is a guest of mine from right when I was brand new in the industry, brand new front desk agent, similar property, Marriott, 716 rooms, not 1,200, but a good chunk. And he was visiting his daughter in hospice, and it was a very unfortunate, situation. He was very much in his late 70s, early 80s. And he needed to extend his reservation by a night or two, but the senior discount rate wasn't available via online. And I was told, we weren't allowed to adjust rates. We had to go through this. Like, there's all these policies and procedures, right?
Yeah, sure.
And I got not a slap on the wrist, but more like a, hey, next time you're going to do a rate adjustment, let us know type conversation. But really just taking the opportunity, like he was explaining, I really, I don't have much. I just am here to see my daughter and kind of say goodbye. And so being able to do something very simple, very, very simple, take $20 off a night or whatever, can really make a huge difference. And I will remember him forever because of every day that he stayed with us. He would continue to come up and he bought me a coffee. He just was very thankful and very, it was a hard situation that just a little moment that I was able to create really made the difference.
To your point, I think not only, it kind of almost just gives me, I'll say first, shivers hearing that, because those are truly great moments like you described. But I'm sure that not only are you remembering that, but I'm sure he remembers that. And to your point, something so small, $20 is probably, potentially had such a big impact on him as well, that I'm sure that he still looks back and was thankful for being able to, if it was being able to afford the opportunity to be there to also create a moment of its own, goes a long way. And I agree, man. I feel like we have known each other for a while. We're kind of, long distance cousins in some ways.
Exactly. It's like we're hospitality brothers for sure. I feel it. No, it's just, I love that you said that. It really does. That's the whole purpose of the show. That's the whole purpose of, I think, why a lot of us do what we do. Hospitality never gets the spotlight it really deserves when it comes to those little moments and the special relationships. I'm pretty sure you and a bunch of your staff and even myself and a bunch of friends I know, I still have relationships with guests that have been repeat guests and very loyal, and we built those connections with,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think, very important. So I'm glad you said that, because it really does. It gives me all goosebumps, and so that's good stuff, man. I love it. Well, I want to get really, because this is like not the whole purpose of the episode today, but to really dive into the impact of COVID-19 on especially such a large hotel and city for you guys. So it's a hard topic, man. Like I don't think there's any easy way to go about it, especially because a lot of segments of hospitality have been able to recover. Maybe some even have doubled or tripled in business and revenue in other areas. So it's like a blessing and a curse for a lot of people. So as a large hotel, how has COVID-19 impacted your business?
Yeah, in so many different ways. So, first of all, I think as we've been just kind of talking about, well, I guess I'll start off in saying the hotel closed back in March. Like a lot of hotels, there was only in Chicago a few hotels that remained open to be kind of almost essential in providing housing, whether it was families that have been impacted by the pandemic or essential travel. And most of that essential travel at that time period back in April and May was primarily medical professionals or government workers of some sort. Since then, I think as we've seen even all around the country, travel has slowly started to pick back up a little bit. But for us, we have continued to remain closed because there's just not quite enough for, as I said, being a hotel of 1,200 rooms, for it to make sense for us to open financially. There's an occupancy threshold, or I'll say kind of minimum, that we're really evaluating for it to make sense. But as a result of that, there's a lot of people that have been impacted. So that's, I think, first and foremost, my heart goes out to, because we're not the only ones. There's still, I think, at least 30-ish hotels that continue to remain closed here in Chicago. And even the hotels that are open, they're not running at full capacity. And so that impact is trickling down in so many ways. So that's, I would say, one of the main ways that it's impacted us. As we look forward, though, I think it's, what we look at in terms of the size of our hotel, we know that as we come out of this, the financial impact that this pandemic is having on our business, we do see that potentially at some point the sheer size of us does become a little bit of a benefit. We know that, as fast as we came into this, it'll be a little bit of a slow return out of it, as we're seeing right now. And when we get to that point of reopening, we see the ability to be able to allow people to very comfortably spread apart, given the sheer size of our business, will allow us to come out of this and capitalize on that a little bit more, or whether that's the ability of how we manage different floors with the guest rooms, and allowing people to gather in different pockets of the hotel. Those are all things that we certainly do think about, but like I said, I think it's just unfortunate the way that it's impacted people's livelihood. Really, that's the key of it. And it's probably just even worth noting that the trickle down effect of that as well is you have these large associations that have had to also postpone and cancel their events, and those associations bringing people together sometimes, in some cases, is the largest revenue generating, or the largest source of revenue for that business. And so they're not able to operate either. And that kind of plays out in every different industry that uses, in some ways, a hotel.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I was going to say, I was always curious. I thought about this, late at night when I'm thinking of hotel stuff, when I shouldn't be. I should be sleeping. But like strategically shutting down rooms offline, like taking X amount of rooms, spread off of your map. And you guys especially came into mind. And it's just like, well, is there a way that strategically you could hit the occupancy number that you need, not to go negative or red in operation costs, but also strategically having these rooms and floor plans and combinations of whatever open up. But I think you made a good point. It's just right now it probably just doesn't make sense. I don't, with how big Chicago is, I just think a lot of maybe this is just my thinking, but like tourism mindset, I don't want to go to a big city with
Correct.
COVID. You want to go like on the outskirts or the, the countryside or whatever. So there's a lot of things that I'm pretty sure you guys even thought 20 times over as well. So that's very, very interesting and unfortunate for obvious reasons. But I wanted to ask as well, what are the steps that you guys are taking from this impacted, COVID-19 has impacted on the business, and willing to, like, I guess, the adaptability for your guys' future?
Yeah. So, it's, in some ways, I think it's nice that what we're trying to find, I think, in the silver lining of all this of being closed is that it does give us, I think, kind of to what you were saying, an opportunity to really think about how we can successfully operate the business in a new way that we just were never forced to do so previously. And we've mapped out, especially as we know that events will resume at some point, and particularly as we're really looking kind of targeting next year, we're having a lot of, I'll say, very thoughtful conversations with our partners in ways that, again, we can kind of capitalize on the sheer size of our space and spread people apart. Can
I ask if have you guys thought of a virtual route at all, like most companies?
Yeah, we have. There's the thing for us. There's purely virtual. There's no really revenue generation for us. It's not a business that we're necessarily in, at least as an individual hotel. But we know that is a part, and that actually, to be honest, has always been a part of our business. We've always had clients that have had some type of virtual component. It's just now it's becoming a little bit of a bigger picture. So in some ways, we have always been prepared for that virtual piece. It's how do we bring those together, because
with the inhuman piece as well.
Exactly. Okay. And knowing that in some cases, an example to probably give is that there's customers that we're talking to that want to bring together a few hundred people. However, the current state and city guidelines are no more than 50 people, but we have a tremendous amount of breakout space. Our ballroom divides into several separate sections. So can we do a little bit of a almost in-person virtual experience where you can still bring people together under one roof, but they're in different areas of the hotel during their stay? And how do we operationally manage something like that?
Very hybrid method. Yeah,
exactly. I think that's what I see as one of the key ways that we're continuing to adapt, is how we do that in person and just expand the virtual needs that are a little bit larger now with this. I feel like hybrid is one of those kind of key phrases that we use these days.
Yeah, no, that's exactly like I've always liked the word hybrid, but now, like, seeing it applied, you're like, okay, this is cool. Like, I think I'd rather be a hybrid than a one or the other type deal. Like, I think it gives you a bunch of flexibility. So that's a very true phrase. I also want to know, so planning for the future. So kind of going off of this hybrid thing, but then also, I think there's a lot of uncertainty with COVID-19, whether there's a vaccine or no vaccine, or, the country just opens up and we just continue to do masks and safe distance and hand sanitization and whatever that may look like. With so much uncertainty, how do you even plan for the future? How do you even, especially, I think, I want to make a comment off of something you said as well, and a little bit previously, but, taking this time of slowness, right? I think a lot of us in March and April had a lot of downtime. Nobody was going anywhere. Things have picked up. Like, obviously I'm in Mexico, or like, people are, going places. But so with this downtime that you have, how can you and your team, with whoever is still, active in the hotel right now, how are you guys planning for the future, especially with the uncertainty that's, kind of mingling above us?
Yeah, you're right. Just taking time to, I guess maybe what I first want to touch on, because as we talk about our brand, and as that relates to everything that's gone on in the world, right? There's so many different things that have happened or are happening right now and have happened in the world that have impacted people personally and professionally. And so I think what we're kind of seeing with that is that people's ideas have changed, and we consider ourselves an extension of somebody's business and how they accomplish their goals. And so we're really taking time right now to listen and understand, empathize with businesses and our individual travelers. And I think it's going to be quite some time, and we have a little bit of that benefit just knowing that we're going to be closed for a little while, to reformulate and build a different type of marketing plan, a different tone of voice, because it's not just the pandemic, right? I think people's attitudes have just shifted because they've had time to have so much self-reflection, to your point. And so that's really part of what we're doing, is taking time to reflect, staying informed, building good partnerships. We're even looking at other businesses that have been impacted and how we can partner with them, staying, I'll say, a little bit more in contact with our tourism partners, our local and national partners, and really just having a lot of good active conversation about how we can evolve as a business. And I'm excited to share more on that, and excited to reintroduce the hotel into the market into a new and exciting way at some point when it's safe to do so.
Yes, of course. I was gonna say, I think it's cool, especially going into the local approach. As we mentioned, this has affected not only the industry, but it's affected your neighborhood. It's affected the businesses around you, the people in the city, the people that are employed by hotels, and just the overall economy, but the ecosystem. And I think when we look internally, again, like the podcast, I deal with people all over the world, and we talk about different markets and different things, but I've seen the big commonality is the moment we focus on the internal ecosystem, as in like our, let's say, block radius, or a little bit out further and a little further and a little further, and expands a little bit more. Then once we get that in synced and aligned and very, I guess, like you said, collaborative or partnered, then that reach that you have for the bigger scale really does have a big impact, especially because you're creating value when you have those partnerships.
Yep.
It's not just you alone, it's you linked up with a bunch of badasses that are in the industry or space that are really bringing value to each other and to the clients or the guests. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of that. So now the hard question really comes into, how do you prioritize this? How do you prioritize the steps leading into the future? I think I'm guilty of this 100%. Talk about the big picture, or talk about this is what I'm going to do, but how do you prioritize the steps leading up to it and then start taking action on them?
Yeah, we in some ways, the quote unquote playbook, I think, that we've operated by, we've had to throw that out the window. I remember we were, even at the beginning of this, I remember sitting down thinking, okay, you know what, we're closed, but at most this pandemic is only going to have an impact. We're going to be back open. We're going to be back to business as usual by May, June. Got to May, June, that certainly wasn't the case. And we were still thinking, all right, you know what, by August, we're still going to be there. Well, we're now almost into October. September heading into October. And so I think all of those normal expectations that we've been used to having, we've kind of thrown those out the window. And we're really just being, very patient in the way that we're approaching this. We're at least using, I'll say, kind of the data that we have now, that we've been able to gather to make a plan, but that plan is really changing every day. And the priority at kind of at the heart of this, I'll say from our business, is to maintain those relationships with our partners that have been there for us, and to continue establishing additional future partnerships with organizations that we may not have thought of before. And so that kind of always shifts a little bit. There's different partnerships that we just, I think, as I've kind of just said, I just didn't think that we would necessarily grapple onto. And so having this time, it's really opened up our thinking a little bit more, and throwing that playbook out the window has kind of allowed us to look at, I think, as you said, kind of the bigger picture in a different way, and really take that approach. You know, it's to say that there's a step-by-step, right now there's not almost, you know, every time I kind of want to put a process in place and say, all right, we're going to do X, you know, first, and then we're going to do Y, and then we're going to do, you know, the next step on, I always get disappointed in some ways. And so, I was going
to say, do you feel like you have to shoot from the hip a lot?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. That becomes a lot of days. And I feel like now I'm more used to it, that I'm really embracing it and I enjoy it. And it, in some ways, we're not really a normal corporate business anymore. We're really independent entrepreneurs of our own independent hotel. And that's really quite exciting, I would say.
No, that's very true. And I think it takes on such a new meaning of literally tackling the day. So like, you know, people, when you said you have a bad day, there's always tomorrow, and tomorrow you give it your best and you do the same thing over and over again. I think it really takes on a whole new meaning of that. But then also, like you said, it gives you the creativity. It's like, okay, how can I make today so beneficial that when I wake up tomorrow, I can ride off of that and continue the chain and continue just taking it a day at a time. And I think there's going to be my personal excitement for like this whole thing with hotels at your size, independent boutiques, vacation rentals, restaurants, anybody in the hospitality space, is the growth. I can't wait to see the growth, and I can't wait to see, this is something we say all the time with other guests on the show, but like the bad providers in the space, you know, that don't have that standard of expectation, whether it's guest service or cleaning procedures or whatever, will most likely fade from this, which then, you know, opens up the market to a whole new opportunity. But then the ones that do succeed and do really well at all these things and set the standard and set the tone and become the innovators of the space are really going to come out on top. And I'm excited it sounds like from everything you guys are saying, is like, I can't wait until, you know, 6 months, a year down the road, I'm going to be calling you up and like, hey, so how's it going? How's it going being on the other side of the tunnel as one of the winners, you know? So especially with the entrepreneur mindset, I think it's going to open up so many opportunities for the industry as itself when we embrace it as the mindset of, we've been doing this for 20 years. Why would we change now? To, okay, we've been doing this for 20 years and none of that matters now. So how can we set the tone for the next 20?
Absolutely. Well said.
So that's going to be the fun part. I think we could geek out about that for hours, but
I think we'll be having a whole new conversation, maybe in person, right? We'll reconnect in some ways. And we'll be able to have a really exciting conversation about the path that we went through and what we're doing in the future.
No, exactly. This is totally off topic, but it's a big goal, big picture for the podcast. I want to do a podcast tour and visit every single one of the guests and do like, all right, let's do where are they now type thing. I think it would be fun. So I think definitely adding you guys to that list for sure.
Absolutely. Would love to.
Meet my hospitality brother.
Like I said, you know, the term I use now, or that I always think about, what quote unquote, I feel like, this almost this motto that I have is, I can't wait to be, you know, intentionally close, having a glass of wine, just, intentionally together. That'll be fun. Well, let's put it on the books. It'll happen at some point.
Well, let's just say a year from now, we'll fire from the hip. How about that?
Exactly.
Well, Marcus, man, it's truly been a pleasure, like getting to know you with our pre-chats and emails, and of course now recording. I think you set a really calm tone and a really like good perspective on everything. I definitely am normally like a little bit louder in the podcast. I'm like, da, 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 da. But you really kind of like, I don't know, you just bring a calm essence to the show. So I'm really excited to, again, keep in contact and do more of what you guys are doing. But for all the podcast listeners out there, I really highly encourage you go check out the Sheraton Grand Chicago Hotel. I will link everything in the show notes. I'll make sure to even connect with Marcus on LinkedIn. I'll get that in the show notes as well. We'll get everything. So if you guys have any questions, Marcus, if you have anything you want to put out for the audience, you're more than welcome. And if you have anything you want included in the show notes, we will do that as well, like your guys' socials, so people can follow along and keep up to date with how you guys are doing.
Yeah, please do. Just stay in touch. We're on the social channels as well. You can follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn. Our website, as you said, you'll link there. So you can stay informed, and we'll be excited to hopefully welcome all of your listeners to the hotel at some point when we reopen.
Yes. So Slick Talkers, stay tuned for, an exciting announcement of them opening up again. But yeah, Marcus, man, thank you again. I am super honored to have you on the show, and we'll stay in touch.
Sounds good. Have a great day.
You as well.
Thank you so much for listening. We love your support and want to provide the best we can to all our listeners. So please find us online, social media, and on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast.
What's up, everybody? If you've gotten this far into the episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast, then you are amazing, and thank you so much for tuning in. We want to send you two places really quickly. If you can, check out the show notes and click the hospitality.fm link. Check out all of our other shows on the podcast network. And don't forget, if you have someone that you want to hear on the podcast, then fill out the guest fill out form so that way we can get them on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy another episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast.